Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss American Fiction, starring Jeffrey Wright, Tracy Ellis Ross, John Ortiz, Erica Alexander, Leslie Uggams, Adam Brody, Keith David, Isa Rae, and Sterling King Brown, directed by Cord Jefferson. Now, before I get into this movie, I have a little bit of a thing that I would like to bring up. That last time I brought up Zone of Interest was shot in Germany when really it was supposed to be shot in when it was shot in Poland. So, and somebody commented on that, and forgive me for saying that because it's been about a couple of months since I've done that review. Well, not like type the review I'm talking about. So, my mistake there. So, I stand by corrected. Now, I went to the theater a couple of times for this movie and saw it again when it came out on Apple TV. So, or yeah, that one. And what do I think of it? Well, it's going to be the same as what I think now, so let's get into this movie. Thelonious Monk Ellison, played by Jeffrey Wright, teaches some students about the Southern American class and the way they learn about the N word, which is not one of my favorite words, and makes a student uncomfortable and sad as he's going on a trip where he lived at in Boston and gets in an argument with one of the parents, which was kind of funny despite it's what the South would say in general, not all of them I'll say, which is a good opening. Monk gets in on the phone with his assistant Arthur, played by John Ortiz, about his book, and the publishers want a book about an African American life. And I'm not going to say black because that sounds wrong, so I'm going to stick with what I just said, African American. While Monk is an African American and doesn't want to write a book about the streets, and goes to a book fair where the audience gets introduced to Sintara Golden, played by Isa Rae, whom I reviewed in a couple of Oscar-nominated movies this year, like for Best Picture Barbie, and which I reviewed earlier this past summer, and same with the Best Animated Feature Film, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, who writes a book about the streets and the life of an African American, while Monk is sickened by the story of the streets. And Jeffrey Wright is very good in this movie, as the acting is tremendous, even from one character I'll get to later in the show, and the movie is well done, being directed by Cord Jefferson, whom I'd never seen, I don't think, any of his stuff, so. Monk gets his sister Lisa, played by Tracy Ellis Ross, who's divorced, and when he gets home, he sees his mother Agnes, who has Alzheimer's, and her helper Lorraine, and I really like these characters. And Agnes is played by the actress who played Blind Al in Deadpool. I forget the actress's name, and the shots are quite tremendous. Monk is at the bookstore as he bumps into Ned, who works at the bookstore, and sees his books are in the wrong place, which is amusing for a dark comedy slash drama. Lisa has a heart attack at a restaurant and suddenly passes away just out of the blue, which feels random, but sometimes life is just too fucking random in general. And they have a funeral at the beach with their brother Clifford, played by Sterling K. Brown, who's the character in the movie, who's the best character in the movie, in my opinion, as a white man named Philip comes by while they dump the ashes of Lisa on the beach, while it feels like he's the beach police, while Monk and Clifford talk about how Monk had the easier life than Clifford, as he's a gay man, and he and Lisa knows about their father having affairs with a white woman, which is funny in a random way, while Agnes makes a leak from the bathtub, and he thinks about putting her in a safer home environment with other elderly people. And Monk has a drink with a lawyer named Coraline, played by Erica Alexander, as she's also divorced, and her ex-boyfriend broken up, I'll say, with her ex-boyfriend, who comes in to check up on her time after time. And I really like these scenes, as we get to know the characters as they're interesting, in my opinion. Monk reads an article about Sintara, and he visits Agnes's doctor, as she has to be put in a group home, as Monk writes a book called let me see if I'm saying this right, Pathology, by someone in the streets, as his pen name Stag R. Lee, which is an interesting choice as he imagines it with people being there, and he sends it to his assistant Arthur, and he doesn't approve of the book, and Monk asks to send the book to publishers to prove a point to them of how sick he is. He's sick of the way they want, as he gets together with Coraline and hang out with her and eventually become a couple. And I really like their chemistry from their first scene on. Monk gets home to see the electric bill hasn't been paid for and asks Clifford to help pay for some of the hospital costs. And he meets with Arthur, and by he I mean Monk, and he says they sold the book, but he wanted to prove it was garbage, and the publishers wants to speak with Stag R. Lee, and he acts like all gangsta and shit, for example. How he's a fugitive while a sheriff who has a crush on Lorraine, and Monk introduces Agnes to Coraline, which are beautifully shot scenes. Agnes, and it was funny the way he acts all gangster and shit. Agnes goes out to the beach as Lorraine loses her for a brief moment, and Monk finds Agnes, and she is having Alzheimer's, where Lisa is roughhousing with the cousins, and he shows her some group homes, and she's not happy about it, as he moves her in ASAP, and gets a call from Carl Brunt. I don't know if I said that right, and he asks Monk to be judged for a judge of books for award purposes with Centera, and he reluctantly takes the position, and this scene is well acted. Monk brings Agnes to Arthur's office and takes a meeting with Stag R. Lee with the movie director Wiley Valdispino, played by Adam Brody, at a fancy restaurant while he looking like he's from the streets, and Wiley wants to make a movie based on his book. Excuse me. And Monk runs out from hearing the sirens and comes back to Arthur's office thinking his mother was in trouble, and Wiley offers $4 million for the rights, and Monk moves Agnes and the group home, and Lorraine is getting married to the sheriff in town. Sorry, I forgot the guy's name, and wants Monk to walk her down the aisle, and all of these are great to look at. Monk as Stag is in a meeting with the publishers, and Arthur has a new title, and Monk has a title for the new title for the book, I'll say, called Fuck. Not with the PH, but with the way it's actually spelled. And Arthur is against it. And the publishers decide to change the title, which feels in your face, which is hilarious. Monk and Coraline get home and see Clifford is in the pool, as it scares the shit out of both of them and forces them in the pool. And Clifford is introduced to Coraline and get to know them, and I really like these scenes for the chemistry between the actors. Monk and Coraline take Clifford to see their mother Agnes while she had a meltdown that morning. She dances with Clifford as she said something pretty insulting, which is, "I always knew you weren't a queer." And yep, it's the Alzheimer's talking, and as he waits outside and asks how he could afford it, as does Coraline, and he comes off like a smartass. And Clifford decides to get out of town, as Clifford tells Coraline this family will break your heart, which will happen later in the film, as Monk goes on live TV for an interview and has dinner with Coraline and sees that she bought the book from Stag R. Lee and gets in an argument and leaves, which is heartbreaking. Which all these scenes are very heartbreaking. Stag's book, is being nominated for a literary award, and Monk is insulted by it and stressed out to the point he wants to make a confession. He wants to confess it to everybody, and takes Agnes out of the house for Lorraine's wedding, and they see Clifford, and Lorraine and the sheriff invite Clifford to the wedding, and this movie is well acted. The wedding occurs at the beach, and same goes with the celebration, and have fun while Monk talks with Clifford as he approaches him, saying he pissed off Coraline, and confesses he's angry these days, and Clifford says people want to love you, which is a powerful speech by Sterling K. Brown. Monk doesn't want to talk about fuck, while Centara believes it is a pandering book, And Monk and Santana, wait, Santana, whatever, are on a lunch break, and they talk about how soulless the book is compared to her work, and have a minor argument about how African Americans are being stereotyped, and had a very hard life, in which they do. In this scene, it kind of made me nervous. Like, some offensive things were said, and people were offended by it. And I'm talking about in the movie, not, you know. And he texts Coraline about being his date, and decides to confess, and wants another idea for Wiley's movie, as everyone except Monk and Santana wants to award fuck as the literary award. And as three others in the table who want to award fuck as the winner, and Monk has no choice but to confess that was his writing, until Wiley, as the movie stops to black, and Wiley talks with Monk about the ending of his movie, and he runs out of the theater to get back together with Coraline, as he apologizes to her. And the movie has a long shot ending, and Wiley says it's too pap or hack or something, I don't know, as he wants something real, and he makes up some and almost confesses about the police coming in and shooting Monk dead, as they were led to believe he was Stagar Lee. And Wiley wants that ending and leaves the studio, and gets picked up by Clifford, as Monk tells him Tyler Perry is playing Clifford in this movie. And this climax did feel like the ending on She-Hulk, which felt a little bit too much, but I accept this ending, unlike She-Hulk, I'll say, as it is, as he doesn't get the girl, and at the end of the movie, which is sad, he comes off like a celebrity. But he comes off like a celebrity, I'll say. That's what I like to see, rather than seeing Monk shot dead, which would have been too much, in my opinion. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.1 out of 10. I really like the characters, as Clifford is the best character in the movie, in my opinion, despite I do like the characters, as they're interesting, in my opinion. And it's kind of funny for a dark comedy / drama, as Jeffrey Wright and Sterling K. Brown has turned in their best performances in this movie. It's well done, well shot, well made, and it makes interesting choices for the right reasons. For example, his alter ego as a writer was very funny, while he gets all gangsta and shit, which was hilarious, and it's very well acted, and the cinematography is tremendous to look at. At the end of the day, this movie is absolutely heartbreaking by the end of it, with an ending where he doesn't get the girl back by the end of it. While it's well acted, and this is a solid recommendation, and this isn't going to win Best Picture, but I liked the movie quite a bit, as it was fun to watch. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Anatomy of a Fall. And until next time, and the Oscar goes to...